Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Leading Change. My name is Emma, and I've got Jonathan with me, and we're going to be talking about when and how to know that it's the time to make your next move and go against your next adventure. But before I get all the questions that I've got for you, can you give everybody an introduction?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, Emma. It's so great to be here. Thanks for inviting me. These days I'm an advisor to executives and founders and CEOs and boards. I help people with really tough problems, business problems, and it's a very intimate, wonderful thing I get to do. Show up in some of the most trying times that folks face and be able to help and shepherd them through those things so they can make great decisions and really reconnect with their purpose.
Well, I'm excited to have you here and have you share a little bit more of maybe that career arc with us as we're going through this discussion. So once upon a time, I want you to take us back. You were in a senior leadership position and you made the decision that this is no longer the right fit for me. And I'm going to take a step away from that role. How and when, can you share a little bit with everybody for context that I have from our conversation, but what that decision looked like and kind of how you knew that that was the right decision for you to make?
Yeah, thanks. I've actually done it twice in my career and for totally different reasons. So I'll just super briefly tell you about the first one because I think it's the second one that you're kind of most interested in. I, after many years, ended up on the senior team of a really large regional hospital here in Canada, which is where I'm located, and hospitals 24/7, and on the C-suite, it was just exhausting work. Really meaningful. I am grateful for that experience. I sometimes describe it as like 3 free MBAs. It was, we had a huge capital project, built out a brand new hospital, and it was just a wonderful experience. But I was totally exhausted. I had young kids at the time, and it just did not connect and match with my life. And so what I did is I quit and I decided to hang out a shingle to found a management consulting firm. And over the course of the next 10 years, that's what I did. We became a B Corp, served hundreds of organizations across the country, and really did some important, fabulous work. I hit a point in my journey, which was kind of at about the 8-year mark, that I realized I might be getting close to the end. And what does that look like and feel like for me? I founded this thing. I hired all these people. The company had scaled and grown. And I hit a point where I realized, I think I might be ready for the next thing.
So let's dive into the second one then. So you've built this company, you're living what you had dreamed about for a number of years. And then you started to question hold on, maybe I'm at the next phase and maybe there is a different transition that's needed. Can you talk a little bit about where that push point came? Because it was different than this no longer fits my life necessarily. And it also is really tied to understanding when and where is the right point to put a succession plan together and help let the next generation lead. So can you talk us through that process as well?
It's a difficult thing to sit with where you're at in your own journey and what still excites you and how much more do you have to give. In my own case, I had been doing a lot of strategic planning work. I still do strategic planning work to this day, but I had been doing an awful lot of it in growing this company. And I think I hit a point where I was just feeling exhausted, feeling like a lot had been riding on me and my ability to sell work and grow the company and be the founder and face of it. And that was simultaneously happening with the rise of one of my employees who just had so much emerging talent, so many wonderful skills. And I tell the story. I was on a vacation in Dublin, Ireland, and I was walking with my wife. And, when you're on vacation, you end up, with a kind of freedom, almost an immunity to, think a bit more broadly. And I was sort of musing that I think I was coming to the end. And my wife, Wendy, she looked at me and said, well, you can't just give 2 weeks notice. You probably need a plan, So I realized at that moment that my plan was this employee coming through and that I needed to move on that, and that I have also been a big believer in, getting off the stage while the crowd is still clapping. And if I was going to live that value, then that meant allowing the next generation to come through, and it meant setting her up for success. So we moved into some succession planning and a transition plan that we were quite generous with. We took almost 18 months to kind of like go through the process, and for me to be able to sort of like fully exit.
So now we're in your next chapter, but there's a transition that comes with building something. And even if it's the right person to take the helm, handing that off comes with its own whole set of emotions that you have to move through, and kind of the identity that you've built being drastically different all of a sudden. So can you talk through a little bit of like what it was like stepping away and what that process is? Because when you shared this with me, it matches up pretty closely with a lot of folks that I know who have, whether it's retiring or selling a business and going on to that next adventure, this kind of mirrors a lot of what I've heard from other folks as well.
Yeah, Emma, 100%. So on some level, the legal stuff and the accounting stuff, that's actually the easy things. There's processes and systems and experts to be able to, get you through those things. It's the emotional journey that you go on. There's an emotional labor that's associated with leaving when you've founded a business and when you've been its leader. It is your identity. It becomes a part, it's an expression of yourself. And so to think of stepping away from that, it's really, really difficult. It's compounded also, maybe you've experienced this with your clients, but compounded when it's a family business, when there's a transition across generations. And I've certainly supported many founders and many generational transfers as well. And that, has an extra layer of mummy daddy complexity stuff going on there, right? So I think it's sort of step one is realizing where you're at, what your needs are, what more might you have to contribute, and is there a next act for you? Is there something that you're still hoping to get to and to do before your career's kind of comes to an end? And if the answers to those things are yes, then there's no time like the present to begin the work of planning. And some of it is practical and functional, but there's also an emotional piece. And many exited founders describe it as grieving. That, really they're riding the old Kubler-Ross curve here and experiencing all of the things from regret and anger and shame and disappointment and you name it, in order for it to settle. And the thing that they have built is going to be changed. There is 100% chance that it will be changed. And so they often don't want it to be changed. They built it as an expression of their self. And so they don't want somebody else to take it and do something else with it. But the act of, giving it over and selling it or, transitioning out means inevitably it will be different and it will evolve and change without you. And you're not going to have any power or control over it anymore under normal circumstances. So these are all really important things to take on board early in your journey and recognize that they will come up for you as you go through the steps.
And I think that this is a really important conversation to have too, tied to just like how much of our identity is wrapped up in our work, whether you own a business or not. And I feel like there's this grieving process and this transition that happens for so many people when it's, changing a job and you no longer have the same coworkers. Like I remember when I left the role that I was at, like I had become a mom there. I learned how to do sales there. I learned everything I know about technology. And all of a sudden, who was I when I wasn't in that role that I had been in for close to 10 years? Like, what does that look like to move on? And so whether it's your own business or a role that you're in or retiring, whatever like flavor of that transition is, I think it's really important to recognize that there's an emotional piece that goes along with that journey because of how much of our worth we typically put into our work. And maybe it's rethinking that and looking at the other aspects of our personality and making sure that we put energy and time into those things as well. But it is, I think, a little bit more of that grieving process when it's your own business and you've put so much of your heart into it.
Yeah, I love what you said there, Emma. There's so much of it that's relational. It's about how we show up and how we are with one another. And when you're with people, you probably hired them. You probably grew the business to the point of having enough money to be able to even imagine hiring them. You built the job description maybe, or with your colleagues you did, and this person comes in and you choose them and they chose you, and there's this bond and this loyalty, and assuming things go reasonably well over time, like, you're walking away from those things. So it's understandable that these things are complex.
Well, thank you for sharing your journey with us. And hopefully this sparks the thought process before the emotional downhill for some people as they're going through all
My
of the different transitions that come with work and life. But thank you for joining me. And for everybody who's watching, thank you for hanging tight with us. And make sure, if you're not already, to get connected with Jonathan on LinkedIn. And then in the show notes, we'll also include a link to a podcast that you can listen to that gives you a little bit of a better insight into what it would be like to work together as well.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Leading Change. If you like what you saw, be sure to come back on a weekly basis and subscribe for more expert interviews focused on digital transformation, change management, and emerging technologies.